we're in right now. And I will bring, as soon as I get myself in my agenda on my iPad, we can bring the meeting to order. Okay, so if you do have a comment, please, I think we're going to have to be kind of judicious about how we're doing this and reasonably, I know we're all a polite group of people, but we have to beware to not try to talk all at the same time. So we'll manage this as well as we can. So I'm calling the meeting to order. We have received the meeting minutes electronically for all but the March 9th meeting. Thank you very much, Lynn, for doing this. So do we have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented, all but the March 9th meeting? We have a motion to accept those minutes.
Motion to accept?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion, any additions, anything that needs to go forward that we need to talk about on any of those? Or if not, then the chair will ask for a vote. Do we have a vote to accept those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any dissents? All right, we passed, so that's very good. Now we have to open up, read it for purposes of reconsideration, because some of the minutes, some of the numbers changed very slightly since our last meeting, and Mike Dennehy, who I'm very happy to say is on the call, thank you, Mike, mentioned that there have been no changes since those since those numbers were altered after our last meeting and since the select board met last week. But the numbers that we voted in are slightly different. There's no change to the overall number in the budget, so the budget number doesn't change, but the individual numbers change. And Mike, if you're there, can you just speak a little bit to that, please? We have Article 11, the appropriation for general government, the OPEB trust, which is Article 30, the affordable housing trust, Article 33. Those are the ones that have, I'm sorry, in Article 34, the cable access related fund. Those are the ones that have, if you can talk to those, we can just vote on those right now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can give you a brief overview of what's going on in town government, if that's okay.
That's fine.
The long and short of the story is nothing has changed from a budget perspective at this time. There's a very important meeting that's going to take place at the State House tomorrow regarding the fiscal year 21 budget. There's a virtual economic roundtable that's being hosted by both the Senate and House chairs on Ways and Means, as well as the Secretary of Admin and Finance. Basically what they do, and I was speaking to Senator Timilty today, who's going to give us a full report tomorrow after this meeting, is in December they do their consensus revenue report. And that's how we see the governor put his budget together that we received, probably about a month and a half ago now. Those numbers are what they call the consensus revenue numbers, and that's what drives the fiscal year 21 budget. Due to the COVID-19, they're going to do a roundtable tomorrow to discuss the impacts of the pandemic on the Commonwealth's fiscal health and economy. So some of those numbers may change based on the report. I don't know if they're going to reduce it 10% or 20%. I'm just throwing numbers around. But as you can understand, in a community that relies heavily on our state aid, especially Chapter 70 this year, where we received $1.2 million over fiscal year 20, rather, it's very important to look at the budget again if in fact they cut that number. For instance, a 20% cut to Chapter 70 money that was allocated by the governor in his preliminary budget estimate would be $250,000 to the town, which quite honestly would make us have to do a juggling act.
Right.
So I will know more tomorrow with respect to that, and that will also impact my board met and both the subcommittee of my board and the finance subcommittee of the school committee met. I think everything's on the table. We talked about how we're going to use free cash next year. Obviously, OPEB and the Affordable Housing Trust are monies that we love to put in there every year. But I think until we get a better picture from the State House. And I await the phone call from Senator Timilty. I will say the Baker Polito administration and our delegates of state electeds have been fully transparent and been basically relaying information to us in real time. So Senator Timilty, Rep. Driscoll, and Rep. Cullinane need a lot of thanks from the town government administration for their transparency and reactiveness in real time. So I should know more tomorrow, at which point my board and the school committee subcommittee on finance are set to meet next Monday, I believe. No, Monday's the holiday, so it's next Tuesday.
So so Mike, here's a question for you. Would we be premature in voting these modifications before we hear anything tomorrow?
I believe so, but unfortunately, we're all under the gun with respect to getting this to the printer on April 22nd, and then getting it back from the printer and getting it printed in order to meet the deadlines for our annual town election, which will be June 9th, and our annual town meeting, which is set to start on June 15th. So I anticipate, this is a long-winded answer, I think you should vote on them tonight. However, I expect a lot of pink, yellow, green, blue, and other colored sheets at town meeting on June 15th.
I'm tempted to say I don't think there's going to be a way to get around there. I genuinely try not to do that, particularly with budget items themselves, but I don't think there's a way around it this time. I think we're going to be in a situation where we just have to be flexible.
Right, and just I'll add one more thing. If we come out of this sooner rather than later, obviously the impact is going to be less on the 21 budget.
Sure.
A perfect example is in the town, we don't rely very heavily on meals tax. We budget about $200,000 a year. As many of you know, we don't have a very big commercial base. We're 3/4 through the year, and if you cut that industry, I'm not sure what they're running at these days with takeout, but you can anticipate a shortfall in that account for FY20. If that goes into 21, then we're also going to see an impact on the 21 budget. So long story short, the sooner we can get out of this thing, with health being the main concern, not getting back into it, I think it's a better financial picture for the town and less juggling.
Okay. I think then, unless anybody has any questions for Mike, if you can hang on just for a few more minutes, because there may be a couple of other things that come up in the course of it, I would like to have a vote, and we can handle these articles 11, 30, 33, 34, and 37. The budget articles, we can hold these. I need a motion to reopen these for reconsideration.
I'll make a motion to reopen the stated articles.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, now we can discuss. Any reason not to open these? Okay, all in favor of reopening for reconsideration? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Okay, it passes. Okay, so we have the numbers in the warrant article, the master list that Lynn sent around a little earlier. I mean, the numbers are there. I think we have to just take the numbers as they're presented. So I think that if we can just have a motion to approve the revised number in each article, specifically Article 11, Article 30, Article 33, Article 34, I think will be covered because the comments really don't change other than having the numbers put in for the comment. And the recommendation certainly hasn't changed. So can I have a motion to accept those changes?
I'll make a motion to accept the revisions to the articles stated by the chair for the revised budget figures.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion?
Now,
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, just a quick question. So we're
Yeah, go
basically doing this under the understanding that they might change again as a blue sheet for the town meeting?
Exactly right. We have to put something in. We have to get this to the printer a week from Friday. The number that we have is as good as we're going to get until we get further information based on what our town administrators just told us. Until we get that change, we have to go with this number. And if the number changes, I mean, it may not, if we get what is needed from state, we'll be fine. Otherwise, we'll just supply it with a blue sheet and we'll take it from there. Blue sheet means whatever color it's going to be.
Whatever it is, just as long as we don't have to go through this again before the town meeting.
No, we can't. This is our last meeting because we have to complete, there's only a little bit of drafting left to do anyway. We just make sure that this is done and into Lynn by the end of this week so we can get it out and approved and to the printer by the end of next week. We'll be fine. So any
If you
further?
haven't seen it, I believe Christine has a question.
Go ahead, Christine. I see you, yeah. You have to unmute yourself.
There I am.
There you go.
Sorry if I missed this. Can you just quickly synopsize what's changed since we looked at it a couple of weeks ago?
Mike, do you want to take that?
Which one in particular? Sorry, I don't have
Well,
the articles in front of me.
Oh, you don't? With general government, OPEB, the Affordable Housing Trust, and the PEG access and cable related.
Oh, okay. So general government was legal services. We were moving some money around to accommodate for more money in OPEB, if that makes sense, right? So we were trying to show, my board had a discussion about the budget and how we use free cash. And what came of it was a slight increase to OPEB, and that money was going to come from a contribution that was going to be made to the Affordable Housing Trust. And then they wanted to readjust the legal services bill, understanding that there are some pending cases that just arrived, and we may need a little more for legal services.
Because we had originally, if you remember, we had reduced that by about $50,000, and we're putting some of it back, I believe, at this point.
Correct, yeah. And we wanted to bolster our OPEB, and unfortunately, the sacrificial lamb was the Affordable Housing Trust.
I don't think there's.
And I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but that's a
No,
general
that's okay.
synopsis.
That's
Yeah.
okay, because the number is in there, and I think that we're okay. It's baked in there. The actual overall budget doesn't change. It's, I don't want to say a shell game, but we are reallocating from one account to another, which I think under the circumstances is perfectly understandable.
Correct, and I hope that answers Member Gimber's question.
Yes. Okay, Christine, you're okay with that? Yeah, good, perfect. Okay, are there any other questions? If not, may I have a motion to accept the reconsidered revised numbers for Articles 11, General Government, Article 30, OPEB, Article 33, and Article 34 to be included in the warrant. May I have a motion for that, please?
I think I did, but I'll also move.
Second,
Second.
do we have any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
any dissent? None heard, motion passes. Okay, so the next thing that we have on is the, let's skip because I see Melinda Collins is here. Hi, Melinda.
Hi.
Hi there. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the Vision for Affordable Housing and the Great Estates article, which I believe is Article 43.
I think you're right. Yes.
And we had come, this was actually a very interesting discussion we had, but Melinda sent me a note, which I circulated to all of you, and Cheryl is here. Thank you, Cheryl, nice to see you.
Thank you, George.
Do we have any, can you give us some further information so that we can have a sense of, if we reopen this for reconsideration, because some of the concern was that we would have developers who are putting affordable units in place outside of where the initial development is occurring. And there was significant concern on the membership's part that there would be a concentration of, we didn't want to have a two-tier place. We didn't want to have the development of a I don't want to use there are terms that I want to hesitate using, but a lot of people have it in their heads of what an affordable housing concentration in a different part of town would be if it were not on site with the development. And so that's the principal concern, and that's one reason why it was voted down. So give us some perspective, please.
Well, I think Cheryl has mentioned too that this is very specific to the Great Estates PUD for Walcott, and it's really intended for that. And I can understand why people are concerned that it could
There's a precedent that we're worried about.
Right. But that's not the intention, because there's already a permit, and it was granted that it could be off-site. It needs to remain off-site at this point. We can't go back and rewrite that permit, but we really appreciate that people are concerned about this, and actually that it's so visible to people now, because it wasn't for a long time, because we're all new at this. And so all zoning going forward should have this. Now, there could be a special permit in the future. I can't predict that, but the idea is in Milton Village zoning, it's inclusionary zoning. So you have to put your sites on right in the project.
Yes.
Now, if there's a density bonus, that's a little different, but that's a clear signal that that's where we're going. And actually tomorrow night, Housing and Affordable Housing Trust and the Planning Department are all talking about an inclusionary development program. So that's what we're busy developing. And that was, the idea of that was accepted by DCHD, the Department of Housing and Community Development. So we fully intend to do that because, as you pointed out, it really makes the most sense community-wise for mixed incomes to be together.
Yes.
And that makes for a much stronger community, and that's the direction we're going in. This was a really unusual circumstance because if everyone remembers Pulte Homes, when they went to do their two condos in one building, DHCD said, you know, we've just had so many bad experiences with this. We really don't want people to be put in the position of having a disagreement on a major renovation or maintenance project and have nowhere to go. So so that's why they really have gone to that model, as Cheryl pointed out, of having a homeowner rent out their unit and both of them be affordable. Now, the other option is for the developer to, in this case, just this time, Northland, it's possible that they could do all rental, and they're a professional management company, so they've done this a lot, and we have confidence. So DHCD has already walked through some of their units because they had already been trying to be proactive and get these units renovated. So they've seen them and they've accepted the couple that they've done already. So we also view that as very positive. But I'll stop there and let Cheryl.
Cheryl, do you want to add to that? Thank you, Melinda.
Well, Melinda did a great job, but I would like to add that one factor here is that the units at Walcott Woods and under the zoning are required to be for 55 and over, and the offsite units are not. And most of Milton's affordable housing is age restricted. So here it gives us the opportunity to get units into a pool of people who have very few options in Milton.
Yes.
So that's another significant factor that I think that the planning board weighed carefully when looking at this zoning originally, when we prepared it for town meeting. And I will say that one of the things that's in the special permit itself too is that the delivery of affordable units has a schedule that works with the delivery of the market rate units.
Okay.
So it's important that this get resolved so that the special permit, the zoning, and DHCD's approval are all in sync with one another. Otherwise, the market rate units won't be able to move on.
can you refresh our memory and give us the numbers of affordable and market rate units that are being discussed here and where the location of the affordable units would be?
Well, there's
Is that,
six.
is that decided yet?
Well, there's 6 affordable. I don't think
Okay.
they've all been decided yet. And there's 54 market rates on site.
Okay, so it's a 60-unit project.
Yes.
Okay. And it's determined, the determination has not yet been made whether it'll be rental or for sale.
Well, the market rates are all for sale.
Okay,
The zoning had required all of the affordables to be ownership.
right, okay, good.
The issue with that is the ownership in a 2-unit building. And that's what DHCD found
Problematic.
problematic, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you two of the units are near public transportation, which is a great boon to people. It does keep your costs down. So we were glad to see that.
Well, yeah, it's great, particularly if you're thinking, for example, if it's a 2-unit and it's not enormous, millennials love that and they love to have access to the T. I have a family full of people like that and they don't want to have a car and they're thrilled with public transportation, so that works.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll point out about the market rate units at Wolcott Woods, there's 3 historic structures that are being preserved and renovated. One of them is into a 2-unit condominium building. And so it's comparable in the sense that that the zoning allowed for off-sites to be in either single-unit or 2-unit buildings. The other thing is that there are townhouses in the Wolcott Woods, so that the zoning allowed for single-family, 2-family, and 3-family structures. So again, when DHCD is looking at some level of comparability amongst the types of units, having, and actually go back, tracking a little bit too, the zoning does allow for rental of some of the market rate units as well. So there's consistency, I guess, if you will, between, even though they're not on site, the affordables, there is some consistency to the on-sites.
Okay. Does anybody have further, thank you both very much. Does anybody have further questions? Because if we choose to open this Article 43 for reconsideration, then we should have a little more discussion about this. So, Doug.
Yes, I'm just sorry to not have the whole ducks in a row, but just to brass tacks, what is the ask here? Or is there changes to the amendment, or are we just being asked to reconsider what it is?
We're being asked to reconsider because we voted not to recommend to the
Okay,
town.
so they just want us to try and think about it again. There are no actual changes to the amendment.
Well, there's no actual changes to the
article.
amendment, exactly right. We're just asking for a reconsideration based on information. And honestly, I don't think we had a lot of this detail when we had our initial discussion. So this is helpful to me. The simple fact that this would be a one-time, really case-by-case situation makes it easier for me to understand. John, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to know what's the difference between this and Brush Hill Road scenario?
Brush Hill Road came in under the cluster bylaw. Are you talking about the Woodmere Estates?
Yeah, the one he just finished.
Yeah, well, that came in under different zoning. And in that zoning, in the cluster, the on-site units were not a problem for the developer to ask for any kind of change or relief. And so that just went through under that bylaw.
Was that because of the configuration and the space available?
Yes.
But there's more space up at Carberry Estate. And I just think because it's up at Canton Ave, they didn't want affordable housing. That's the way I think.
Well,
That was, yeah, go ahead.
if I may, there were a lot of considerations for the Canton Ave property. Part of it was the fact of its proximity to the Blue Hills and the view sheds that people are accustomed to on Canton Ave, also in the historic structures. That property was quite large. There was concern that a developer could, under the existing zoning, the subdivision zoning, come in with a multi-lot subdivision, which would have entailed demolishing the historic structures and having new roadways, removing trees, and there wouldn't be any permitting process which would have prevented that. Because when a subdivision comes to the planning board, as long as it meets the requirements for a subdivision, we really don't have a leg to deny it. We don't have a leg to stand on to deny it. So there were a lot of factors in that zoning. There was a lot of interest in the neighborhood. There was a long process before the zoning even was crafted and brought to town meeting. And then the special permit itself was a lengthy process as well, with a lot of residents in that area weighing in. But the significant factor was to cluster all of the homes towards the middle of the property to preserve view corridors. And there's wetlands on the property too. And so that had to be factored in. And then again, as I said, saving the historic structures so that the view down Canton Avenue would still be to see the former governor's house, Governor Wolcott's house, and to see those historic properties in their natural landscape. So the Historical Commission was very interested in seeing that historic landscape be preserved as well.
Thank you. Doug, did you have a, I'm sorry, John, do you have a follow-up?
No, I just wanted to thank her.
Okay. Doug. Did you have
Yes,
another
thank
question?
you. Yeah, more of a comment and plus a question. Thank you both for providing this. And as George, you said, this is a lot of more detailed information, and it's certainly an important issue. And that in mind, just looking at the participants, we barely have a quorum.
I know that.
This
I'm
is
looking at that now.
a significant issue, and many of the people on a committee, the members who did have concerns, are for whatever reason or another not able to participate.
Right.
Wondering if there's an appropriate time to table this, to actually have it at town meeting rather than try to do this now, because I don't know if we could have the full discussion, and certainly don't have all of our members involved for this.
Doug, and George, may I just offer one comment before
Please.
you make that decision? If this is not supported, the off-site units will still be allowed. It just will be in the manner in which they are done off-site. It will not and cannot change that provision of the special permit for Wolcott Woods.
Right.
Would they have to be permitted specifically and individually?
No, what that would mean is that those sites would be, I mean, it would still be permitted. It would just be very hard for the town to get them on the subsidized housing inventory, which we desperately need. I mean, we need affordable housing, and we really need to up our percentage. So it would be very difficult, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but to not have the recommendation of the warrant committee, or a no recommendation, I guess I would say that, to have a no recommendation from the warrant committee, I would just be very concerned that people would have a difficulty changing their sort of viewpoint on it, because they may not. We're all a little stressed right now. And they may not sort of have the bandwidth at the moment.
Yes.
So you're all so familiar with the articles, so I think we talked to you about it and it made complete sense, but other people may not be coming at it from your depth of knowledge. So
I am sensitive to that. I'm also very sensitive to Doug's comment. I will say this, though. I think that several of the people who had voiced concern about this would listen very sympathetically to the explanations that we've just had. And I think, not to put myself in their place, I think that they would be considering that this is probably an okay thing to do, and perhaps we were not as well informed when we made our original decision, and perhaps it would be okay to do this. Again, I'm sensitive to walking into the town meeting and we have our recommendation as a no, and then we kind of flip on them. I mean, that we have a quorum, it's still legally binding,
Yes.
and it is a legitimate, valid meeting, et cetera. New information is new information. This is new information. We're acting on it. I think we have a response. I would go from this perspective, and Doug, I'm again very sensitive to what you're saying, but we have new information. It is a valid meeting. It is a legal meeting. We're empowered to make that decision. And the only thing that we'd have to do is find one of us courageous people here to draft the opinion and the comment after the recommendation change.
I understand.
Should we choose to do that?
Yeah, I understand, George, and thank you. I just wanted to point that out, that it is such a momentous issue. If I could follow up with a question then,
Please.
Since this would apparently make it that much more difficult to guarantee affordable housing units, there's no way to quantify how difficult that would be. What impact would it have that we have on our current projects? I didn't believe that this article was sort of retroactive for zoning articles of permits that are already in progress. How much more difficult might it be in the future? Because there is some concern that we might unfairly, however it's perceived, rightly or wrongly, have a concentration of affordable housing in, say, one section of the town. And
One
we
thing, if
certainly
I
want to prevent that.
Doug, to respond to that on the two families, the planning board, and I think the housing committee too, has looked at, had mapping done by the GIS department, Alan Bishop at the DPW, and where we have multifamilies in town and where we have two families. And those are actually pretty dispersed. You might think that they're concentrated in the Residence C districts, but they're not entirely in those districts. And so one of the things actually that's led to, not with a capital A affordable, but the small a affordable, in other words, that units that aren't on the subsidized housing inventory, two families have been purchased and converted into two condominiums. And those two families had prior to that had been more affordable as rentals, and then they are when they're sold as condominiums. And each of those condominiums is sold for quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
And so,
sure.
one opportunity is for one of, for that kind of a structure to be sold in the case like this for this developer, and basically kept affordable, but shifted over to the capital A, being, in other words, on the subsidized housing inventory. So it's not really the creation. So it's, it's very hard to create new places for housing in general in Milton. And so a lot of it is people buy something that's existing and either convert it or add to it or tear it down. And so having the properties that are, as Melinda said, close to transit for affordable units is actually something that's pretty desirable. And so some of those two families are located, or there's, let's say, larger numbers of the two families are located where in closer proximity of public transit.
Okay, thank you. Just as a last thing, so this, to reconsidering and changing it to an approved for the article would make it easier for the planning board to sort of not coerce, but negotiate with developers for even more additional affordable housing units than you otherwise would have gotten?
No, so in this case, this is, well, this is zoning, so it's, the zoning, it can apply to other projects, but this zoning was pretty tailored to that particular site. And so the planning board issued a special permit to the developer of Wolcott Woods on an application that was filed pursuant to that zoning. So regardless of what folks may think about the off-site provision of the zoning, the permit is still valid because it was granted under that zoning. So there's a distinction between what the zoning says and then there's one application that's been granted, or applied for and granted a special permit. So we can't go backwards on the Wolcott Woods. What we want to do is allow Wolcott Woods the opportunity to have the affordables in a 2-unit building, which zoning said they could do, and which the special permit said they could do, but what DHCD had some trouble with as 2 ownership units. So it's really when they got to DHCD that this became the problem. This went through the whole zone, the typical way that zoning gets approved, which is a process with the planning board, then it goes to the warrant committee, the select board and the warrant committee, town meeting. So all of that went through previously. Then the applicant came to us with an application. We spent significant time, months and months, reviewing a very detailed application, and then granted the special permit. At the time, the developer was looking at the opportunity of purchasing 2 family units. It's in the zoning that they could do that. The planning board looked at what they were thinking about and gave them an indication, yes, it was worth pursuing. So go talk to DHCD, because they are the ones who determine whether they will count on the subsidized housing inventory. It's when they got to that point that they ran into a snag.
Okay. I was more wondering, is going forward, would this help you get more affordable housing units, or is it just solving a current problem? That's more what I was wondering about.
Yeah, I think what it does, though, it goes back to what Melinda said, I think, earlier, which is how we're looking at inclusionary zoning overall now. We've learned from this, and we've learned from others. We learned from Woodmere and others. You know, what's the best way to do this is really to try and do it on site. But we also have to be mindful that we need units in town. So if there are opportunities that we have to consider something a little bit different than the ideal, then that's what we think that in the case that we did on this one, that this was a good path. For the Pulte property, we also gave a couple of options. Again, wanting to have, the important part was getting the units. And now that some people, we've had more discussions and more interest in why off-site and why not on-site, there's an agreement that we should prioritize having them on-site. So as we look at zoning in the future, we're going to need to look at that. But it doesn't change anything that's permitted under zoning that exists.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your indulgence, and I think I may have fairly well brought up the concerns of people who may not otherwise be here, so I'm fairly well satisfied. But if George, Chair, if you did not see, I think Christine has a question.
Yes, I did. Christine, hit it.
So I just want to be super clear. I think what you said was the only thing that this article changes is the ability for the housing to be rental. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Basically.
Okay.
And to be in another locale, off-site.
No, I think that's already
Just to make sure that
permissible.
but also just to make sure that you understand. I want everybody to make sure that that's clear, that we're still talking about that.
But I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that stipulation is already in place regardless of whether this article passes or not.
That's right. I don't think everybody appreciated that when we were voting, though. I'm sure that was the case, because there was some real gut reaction against it, and I don't think they were clearly understanding that. So this clarification, I think, helps a lot.
Second clarifying question, you said, and I didn't really track this, you said that if this does not go through, we can't count this as part of our affordable housing inventory. Is that a stipulation of DHCD, or why is that?
Well, I didn't say we couldn't. I said it could be much more difficult, because the way the zoning and the permit track now is that they would be 2 ownership units, say, in the same building. So it would be a 2-family that would be converted to a condominium. And DHCD has had a lot of very negative experiences with this, because you have 2 condo owners and then there's no tiebreaker. So if there's a major issue, there's no intermediary for them to work with. And it's just put a lot of families into some bad situations. So they've found that that model of having an owner then have an extra unit to rent out, and both of them be affordable, does work well. And that's also one of those things that's a pathway out of poverty for some people, if you will, depending upon how low on the scale of the area median income we go, because those people then can perhaps do well enough to sell their unit to another person who needs affordable housing and move on. And so, so it has a lot of, that model has a lot of benefits. But as I said as well, it could be that there would be 2 rentals and that it would just be professionally managed by Northland or another company. And we have very little rental in Milton. So that either one of those would be a great model. And both of them would be acceptable for the, easily acceptable for the SHI, as long as the units meet their standards and the standards of the permit that was drafted by the planning board.
So just to be clear though, the affordable housing requirement is not relieved if this doesn't pass.
Right.
They have to pursue a different way of fulfilling the requirement, which would likely be, as Melinda said, it would require them to probably seek all single families off-site, which might be challenging.
Yeah.
And then because the zoning and the special permit do not allow the units to not be on the SHI, in other words, they have to have DHCD's approval. It could be that something else needs to be looked at down the road if fulfilling those 6 units in single families became difficult, because the project can't move forward beyond a certain number of units. And I'd have to go back and look at the special permit and to recall exactly how many units they can build. But I think they probably have permits for as many as they can before they have to deliver some of the affordable units.
I think
And
that's,
so then we're looking at impacting the project schedule. So
Right, right. Christine, does that help?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think are there any other questions? Any of our telephonic participants, Kathy, Rosemary, any of you have any other questions to add before we take a vote to reconsider?
This is Kathy. In listening to the conversation, it sounds to me like this was not necessarily an oversight in the original permitting process, but more a conscious decision based on the factors that Cheryl was talking about. So I guess in seeing that, I think I originally voted no on this one, and I think I'm satisfied with what I've heard now, that this additional information is helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. If anybody else, and then if that's the case, if we have nothing else, I need a motion. I'll ask for a motion to open for reconsideration Article 43, provision for affordable housing. We have a motion.
This is Kathy. I'll motion to reopen this article for discussion and revote.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, what do we think? Based on this information, are we comfortable making this a recommendation to town meeting, changing our recommendation from not recommended to recommended?
Technically, we still have to vote to open it.
I thought, oh yeah, okay. So
Sorry.
we haven't. Well, we're doing that now, and that's why that's why we're going through this, because that's the whole exercise.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've had is there further discussion we have to have so we can open this? Or can we take the vote? I think we can take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Rosemary, you're opposed. Okay. Lynn, please make sure that we have an accurate vote and we know who's doing what here. Okay, so we're opening this Article 43 for reconsideration. What are we thinking? Is the information we've received satisfactory to have us reconsider what we had initially voted against? Don't be shy. John.
Just the location of Walcott Woods and then the other development on Unquity Road, both of them got to put their low income off site. And that's kind of tough for me to accept. You know what I mean?
Understood.
And no matter how you look at it, they're all upscale developments, and they're not allowing affordable housing, to put it that way. And I understand affordable housing's $100,000 now, from what I understood. And
Maybe
it-
even more than that in some places, John.
Right, and I'm just saying, it just doesn't set too well with me. You know what I mean?
Yes, and this is one thing that we talked about. Now, I guess if this is a recommendation change, should we, the warrant committee, choose to change the recommendation, I think it should be very clearly drafted that this is something that we are assenting to because it is an exception to what we ordinarily support for mixed income as part of any further development that's happening in town, which I frankly believe in very strongly, having worked in it for a while. And I think that there are many, many benefits, and to have sequestered affordable housing is something that we should be discouraging. But given the peculiarities of this particular project, which I understand, and the single aspect nature of it, that's something that we should highlight should we choose to change our recommendation.
Yeah.
So John, I understand your perspective. What else do we hear from the membership? Christine.
I'll make a comment. I'm struggling a little bit to understand the history of affordable housing and how it's managed here in town. I think what I'm hearing is that even having the stipulation is something that's relatively new, and there's thinking kind of looking forward that the ideal situation is to have it all together. I don't really know if that's something that's part of zoning or permitting, or how that gets solved for. But I feel fairly satisfied that that's the mindset and the desire for any other, Milton Landing or other new developments. Obviously, not obviously, I agree with John. I wish that it had been embedded in those other developments, as do I think other members of the committee. But I think the spirit, it sounds like, maybe Cheryl or Melinda can comment on that, but it sounds like we're kind of moving in the right direction.
Okay. Anyone else? It's Doug.
This is
Okay.
Kathy. I think I'm agreeing. I think we're moving in the right direction. It seems like maybe we had some pauses in the beginning, but I think the intent now is to do the right thing and to have the inclusionary development meeting that Cheryl mentioned. Sounds like it's the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Doug?
Yeah, I think overall for affordable housing, we are beginning finally to make progress and actually picking up speed in doing so. But I do share John's concern that with these larger developments, that there's a reluctance on the part of the developers to put their affordable housing units within their developments for whatever reason, valuation, marketing, whatever. So I understand, and I'm just going to extrapolate and fill in the gaps, that they probably choose to not build from scratch affordable housing, that they actually go out and buy older properties, maybe multi-units within town that are existing, and restore them and then sell them as affordable housing.
Or rent them as affordable housing.
Or rent them as affordable housing, turn them over to the Affordable Housing Trust or whatever. So that might allay some of the fears of a concentration, because they're basically acquiring from the open market the existing houses. And I would just trust that the planning board or the select board, whomever the reigning authority would be, would encourage more on-site units, but realize that it is a very difficult challenge for them to do so. And so that this might help in either direction. One, get them to do it, but also allow us even greater momentum for getting affordable housing units in town, which we do desperately need.
Melinda.
Oh, thank you, George. I just wanted to note that one of the particular challenges with this project, as I understand it, I came in well after it even started to be talked about, and it was permitted when I came into office. But part of what happened through negotiation with the neighborhood, and Cheryl could tell me if I'm wrong, was the age restriction. I don't believe it had started out as age restricted housing, and because it was envisioned as an ownership project, that's one reason that they ended up putting the units off site, because selling an affordable home ownership unit in an age restricted market is really difficult, because you have to have a low enough level of assets to actually qualify. And so often they're difficult to sell condominiums. That's what I'm told. But Cheryl could probably elucidate a little more there.
Well, that notion of age restricted comes in frequently because people ask, what about the impact on the schools, right? So if you have an age restricted development, the thought is that the impact on the schools is not there. One of the other things that was discussed at this time was that the developer wasn't opposed to putting those 6 units on site. There was great concern in the neighborhood about having 60 units on the site and where they would go. And it had to do with all the factors that I explained earlier in terms of the historic nature of the property, the view sheds, etc. So there was a cluster of them that would have been in closer to Canton Avenue, in areas that would have been more visible. And the developer had said that was the lowest unit count that could work in this kind of a development there. And one of the large concerns, and now you probably have been following, that there's been 4 large 40B applications filed in Milton, where the scale of those and what the destruction of those proposes on those sites, that's what was a concern of many people, that what happened on that property on Canton Avenue, and that we'd be looking at numbers of large-scale buildings that would have a far greater impact on many things in town services, traffic, etc. So I think there was a lot of discussion about how to reach a balance for what would be appropriate for that site, what the neighbors would support. And, you know, as I said before, it was more than just affordable housing that people were looking at. It was the historic properties, the Blue Hills, the historic landscapes. And so there was a lot of work on a lot of people's part that led to town meeting supporting the zoning a few years ago. And then once that zoning was supported, then the application and the planning board's review of that was making sure that what was getting built would match that zoning and be as well crafted as could be. So that's just some of the background and the history. But it's I think tying to the same question about the affordable units and putting them on site is this notion of how much age-restricted housing should we have in the town. Almost, as I said at the outset, nearly all of our affordable units are age-restricted, and nearly all of our multifamily housing is age-restricted. And so we really limit for other folks who might be better suited to be able to afford in a multifamily development. It's one of the things that the Housing Committee and the Planning Board are trying to address with some zoning. And as you know, it's because one of the other articles is mixed use overlay zoning, which has been years in the making. Changing zoning is not a short time process. And so there's a lot of factors that go into it. But generally, you know, the way these developments work is there's no subsidizing agency who's subsidizing these affordable units on a market rate development. So they have to be subsidized by the market rate units in that development. So one of the things is the higher you make the affordability, then you have to consider increasing housing trust, and the planning board and the select board look at moving forward on the housing production plan.
Any other, John?
How many affordable units are we getting from Canton Ave? 2, 4?
I'm sorry, from this project, from Wolcott
Yeah,
Wood?
yes, Canton Ave.
6.
6. 54 market rate, 6
So do you know
affordable.
where they're gonna go? Do you right now know where they're gonna go?
Melinda, do you have the locations?
No, he has to actually, and he's been looking for properties ever since they got the permit. So they have to buy something on the market. So
Good time to be buying.
there are 2 units that have been refurbished and that DHCD has gone through and accepted over near Mattapan Square near the T. So there are 2 there. He's looked at some sites on Canton Ave, a parcel there, and so that's kind of around Franny's Corner there. So he's looking everywhere he can, but of course he can't. He has to wait for things to come on the market, just as if you and I were buying something. So I don't know what else Northland might be looking at the moment. I haven't really been keeping track of what's been going on at the market, and probably nothing's really gone on lately. But yeah, so those are 2 areas.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. If there's no other commentary, no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion to approve this for town meeting, to recommend this for approval to town meeting. Article 43. Do we have a second? Do we have a motion for that?
I will make a motion that we change our recommendation to approve, provided that we include in our comments, if not the recommendation, the chair's previous advice of stipulating how this is a unique situation and is in general contrary to what we do.
Okay. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, Lynn, would you take the roll on this one, please? I just want to make sure that that I'm counting properly, and if you can take the roll, that will help.
I will do my best. Okay. Christine, yay or nay?
Yay.
John, yay or nay?
Yay.
Jonathan, yay or nay?
Yeah. Am I on mute? Good.
Nope, I can hear you. Kathy, yay or nay?
Yay.
Doug, yay or nay?
Yay.
Rosemary, yay or nay? Yay. And Brian, yay or nay?
Yay.
Have I hit everybody?
You forgot me, but I would be a yay.
Okay.
That's
All
okay.
right.
The chair usually doesn't vote, but in this case I will. I try to avoid voting unless there's a tie.
Mr. Chair and members, I just want to thank you for your time in reconsidering this, and be happy to talk further to your members who weren't able to make it tonight, if that would be desirable.
That's very, very helpful. If we need that, Cheryl, I'll ask them to contact you or give you their information, however they want to handle it. But thank you both very much for your time. I think we have one other reconsideration. I'm sorry, let me get back. I'm sorry, my timed me out. We have reconsideration.
Thank you, and be well, all.
I'm sorry, what?
I said thank you and be well all. I'm signing off.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for all of your work. and
Okay.
hanging in there.
So we have 2 more of these to go through, should we choose to. One of them, and one of them I have to honestly admit, is two of them. One is the Prudent Investment Trust Assets, Article 37, and the other is Article 45. And I'm sorry, the last one is Article 38 for reconsideration and discussing on the alternative delivery to printed town meeting material. I had thought we recommended that for approval.
I thought we voted yes on that.
We voted yes on
We
that, so
did.
I don't know why we would have to reopen that. I think, particularly given the experience that we're having now with this virus, I would think that that would be something everybody would like.
Yes.
So I am tempted to say we don't want to revote that one. We have the prudent investor rule, which is Article 37. Article 37. And then after that, the adoption of Article 45. But Article 45, I also think we voted in favor of.
We did.
Yes, and Article 45, I don't believe there's been a substantive change to that. That's the dropping of the interest rate on deferred taxes from 8% to 4%. We like that, as I recall.
Yes.
So I don't know that we necessarily have to vote because I didn't see a substantive change in that wording at all. And certainly the spirit of it is what we want anyway, yes?
Yes.
So the last one, Mike Zulis, the chair of the last thing we have to talk about then, I think, is the prudent investment of trust assets, Article 37. Mike Zulis and I had a long conversation about this, and he is, I mean, I'm kind of sort of the opinion that we may not have taken everything into consideration that we needed to, because the item itself, Article 37, gave more latitude than the old one, but also still kept, let me just pull it up so I can make sure that we have it. Article 37 is on page 46. It was on page 47, wait a minute, this is a long one, of the warrant. If you have the warrant report electronically, oh yeah, it's after the Stormwater Authority. That's a monster of an article. I'm still scrolling, I'm sorry. Brief. Okay.
George,
Yep.
just as a question, I have the warrant master draft dated 3/17 that I think was included over an email
Yep.
recently.
Yep.
Are the changes recommended, the words that are underlined, say for Article 38, the electronic delivery?
Yep.
A couple sentences that are underlined, are those the changes in wordings?
Those are the changes.
Okay.
Maybe we do have to vote on those then.
Because
Yeah, I'm just looking at that now. I've got it right here.
because that might be more of a technical thing of saying, email available to those who sign up or something like that.
Yep. Okay. I see that. That's on page, thanks for bringing up. That's Article 38. It's on page 67 for those of you who have it. There are a couple of changes that actually make more specificity to the article itself than was there before. I don't think it substantively changes anything that we talked about, but for form's sake, we could probably vote on it. So before we get to 37, let's just clean this one up. May I have a motion to reopen discussion on Article 38?
George, this is Kathy. I'm sorry. I'm having internet problems, so that's why I'm not at the WebEx. Could you
That's
just tell
okay.
me what the changes?
The changes were wording at the end of the first paragraph, or delivering or providing access to electronic copies of the warrant to town residents who have elected to receive warrants electronically at least 4 days before the day of such meetings. That's the substantive change in one. And then it is a clarification. Copies of such, in the second paragraph, copies of the report shall be left at the dwelling houses of the town or delivered electronically or made available electronically to town residents who have elected to receive such reports electronically at least 4 days before the day set for consideration of the various articles. Those are the changes.
So this is not just wording. This is saying that you basically have to opt out of getting it delivered to your home.
It says you automatically won't get it delivered to your home. And if you
Right.
want an email, you have to sign up for the email. They don't just automatically send a blast email out to you. You have to go and sign up on the town website to get it elected.
That's what it used to say, but I'm reading this now and it says,
No, I
and by
think it's
leaving printed copies thereof at the dwelling houses in the town, or, so it sounds to me like they're going to continue with the mailing unless you say, don't take me off the paper mailing. And maybe they had to do this legally or something, but it'd be good to have some context.
I think this was the intent initially. I don't think the intention has changed at all.
If I wrote the comment, and the intent initially was that unless, I was actually going to put in some wording in the comment to say, you know, if you call and you ask, they'll send you a paper copy. And I was told, like, no, that wasn't going to be the policy. It wasn't going to get mailed to homes, period. Full stop. So something changed. I don't think it necessarily changes our vote, but this isn't just, there's something changed.
Yeah,
I think he's saying not the warrant, but actually a report on like our debates and the questions. They shall also consider all questions submitted to the voters of the town, excluding, they shall report in print before all such meetings, their estimates or recommendations. So I think it's allowing us to mail out more of a synopsis than the actual warrant. Because it's saying we report. And the reports can be mailed out, but not the warrant. We may need clarification on
I
this.
think we need Mike back.
Yeah.
We can accept it as a friendly amendment at town meeting. Because we already did accept it.
We did accept it. Yeah, we did accept it. And it doesn't change. The recommendation doesn't change.
No. It would change slightly to include the new wording. I would suggest that we just leave it as a friendly amendment to town meeting because we don't have Mike and there's too many questions. Is that acceptable?
We could possibly get Mike back. Lynn, do you have access to his email? And ask him just to hop back on if he can.
If she doesn't, I can try sending him a text.
I just sent an email.
Okay, fine. Okay, let's wait on that one then till he gets back. And then the one just before this, Article 37, we have been asked to reconsider this one, and that's why there's no comment. To see if the town will vote to authorize the select board to petition the general court to enact legislation to authorize the town to invest the town's trust funds in accordance with Chapter 203C of the general laws, et cetera, et cetera. The intent here was the article, the intent is to permit the select board to use alternatives to highly conservative funds so that the town can generate higher return. Now, of course, that entails higher risk as well. And one of the reasons why the bylaws were very specific about the scope of risks that we as a municipality should and shouldn't be taking. One reason why we were concerned about this one. Doug.
I'm just want to ask, may I ask who is asking us to reconsider this?
The select board.
Are they asking that we no longer approve this?
We didn't approve it.
If I recall, we didn't approve it because it was super vague, right?
Yeah, it was too vague. That was the problem.
Oh, because I'm reading it recommended that the town vote. It's reading like we approved it.
I don't think we approved it. Lynn, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I don't think we approved Article 37. I don't have my notes of that meeting in front of me, unfortunately. But I don't think
I have the list that we were
it-
working on that day, and I thought, my notes say that we recommended it back to the select board, but we didn't approve.
That's what I thought. I didn't think we,
Here's Mike, and it's my understanding it was not approved, and he wants you to reconsider. Here's Mike.
hi, Mike. Mike, we have 2 questions for you. Thank you for coming back on.
Sure, no worries, Chair. Sorry about that.
No, not a problem. We're grateful that you're back because we have Article 37 and 38, the last bits that we have to do. 38, we had questions. I think this one's going to be a little bit easier. Changes for the electronic delivery of the town meeting warrant. And what was the substantive change that we're being asked to reconsider?
So what we did was we tried to make it a little easier for people to understand, and we asked for a target number. So we're going to ask that about 500 be printed. 300 of those will go to the town meeting members. Obviously, your committee, my board, and any other elected board in town will get copies. Other copies will be housed at the library, the Council on Aging, and in the Select Board office. Basically, we were trying to quantify a number that would show a savings, but also provide printed copies for those that need them. Anybody else can reach out to myself at Town Hall or Jen McCullough or Hillary Waite and ask for one electronically, and we'll print it for them. The savings for printing and distribution is monumental.
Understood. The comment here reads, the last sentence, second to last sentence, approximately 1,000 paper copies of the warrant will be printed and available at Milton Town Hall, Milton Public Library, and the Council on Aging.
Okay, thousands the number we came up with then. I apologize, yeah.
Okay, so
But
there's
the
no
idea
change.
was 300 town meeting members, boards and committees in town, and then anyone else that would like to pick one up could come to those 3 locations. Anyone else, we could then print it for them because so many people use electronic devices to generate their town meeting warrant.
Okay, so the underlined, I don't know if, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but the underlined, there are 2, in the 2 paragraphs, we have underlined town, I think these are changes to the initial wording that we received, delivering or providing access to electronic copies of the warrant. I don't have a comparative to see what it was before that.
Okay, let me quickly look through my email here. Thank you, technology, to see what the cost was before. Is there a dollar amount next to that there, Mr. Chair?
There is no dollar amount other than in the comment.
Let me put it in perspective. Jen McCullough has done an instrumental amount of work on this town meeting article. And she did print up a little cheat sheet for us.
Because I guess the question that we have is that, we voted in favor of this and the comment is favorable in the recommendation. You recommended this town meeting, and now being asked to open it for reconsideration, I can't tell what the substance of that reconsideration is.
Okay, it's probably that specific number of 1,000. Let's see. So
it's not mentioned. I don't see it in the recommendation, and it's not in the article.
Okay, let me look, because I know town council was working on this article as well recently, or for my board.
I think if I can possibly help, Town Administrator Denny, you just kind of clarified it for me. When we read it, it said it sounded like you were going to have to opt out. Everything was it was going to get delivered as I'm reading it again, and it says to the constables of the town. I think that's the population that you just described, the town meeting members, this committee, they're all going to get mailings. I think that's what it says.
Okay, that's so, and you wrote the comment, so I would rely more or less on your interpretation here.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Shall be directed to the constables of the town. So it's not saying it's going to go to everybody, just to that population.
Right. So
Okay.
there's the change. That's what we needed to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have? All right. Before we take a vote to open for reconsideration, does anybody have an issue with that? I actually think this is better.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So, Mike, can you stick with us for one more?
Sure. Yeah.
We'll just go through this vote. So the chair will entertain a motion to open for reconsideration Article 38 with that change?
So moved, Jonathan.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. So the substance of it is that now we have delivery to the town residents rather at the request of the constable or another official. That's the change. And it doesn't change our recommendation because we like this to start with. So if there's any further discussion, let's have it now. If anybody has a question, please raise it. And if not, the chair will entertain a motion to, let's see. Okay, I guess we have to have the motion to open it. We had the motion and the second. Now we have to open it. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so now we need a motion to approve the wording, which does not necessitate a change in our recommendation for Article 38. As listed here in the revised warrant draft of 317. Does anybody have, do we have a motion for that?
I'll move that we accept and recommend to town meeting acceptance of Article 38 as revised.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Terrific, it's passed. Thank you. Okay, Article 37, last bit, to see if the town will vote to authorize. All right, so this is article, these are the trust funds. Mike, we had a conversation, Mike Zulis, you and I, about this. Do you want to give the background on this? Because right now there is no comment here because we technically, I don't believe we recommended this, but this draft says we did recommend it. I don't believe we did. I think we recommended it, we remanded it back to the select board. We did last time.
Right, that was my understanding that you remanded it back to the select board.
Right.
Do you want
This
a
draft-
general overview of the article itself, or?
Please, yeah, I think we know the article, but just give us a sense of what the select board had in mind for the trust fund and the different options available for investment.
Right, so in a recent conversation with Rich Rogers from Abbey Capital, who manages the funds for the town, and the town treasurer, they enlightened us that 7% of the trust fund money right now is in equities, which is a low number, thankfully, in this economy. But the idea of that, a portion of that, as explained to us, was because it was very limited. You have your GEs and your others, but you don't have Facebook, Amazon, and the other ones that are
It was
a
the
little more.
S&P 100, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So the idea was to give the manager of the town's trust funds a little more leeway, and the treasurer, when it comes to investing in equities. It just gives them a little more room to move if they want to be in equities with a percentage of the town's investment funding.
And according to this chapter, the certain sections of chapter 203C of the general laws, are there specific recommendations included there for investment alternatives?
Yeah, so Milton's not the first town that will have adopted this. I think I spoke in front of your board sometime in January over at the Council on Aging, and we talked about what this can be used for, and there were some limitations in place. I believe it was Cohasset that has recently filed for this same home rule petition. Theirs has not gone through yet, but there was another community that talked about that this can only be used for trust funds, but not our stabilization funds.
Okay. So this would be, so the trust funds are eligible for this, the stabilization funds are not.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any discussion? I mean, having spent so many years in investment management, I think that based on what I have seen, it seems that having greater flexibility is very much in order. I think that if these limitations are not going to be extreme. I mean, there's no chance they're going to take the money and go to Foxwoods with it. I think that's what we want to be careful doesn't happen. I think we can reconsider this recommendation and vote to give them the latitude that they want with the trust funds.
Mr. Chair, yeah, that's the general broad sense is to open up the capability of our investment options.
Okay. Do I have a motion to reopen discussion for reconsideration of Article 37?
I'll move that we reopen for discussion and reconsideration, Article 37.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. So we're reopening discussion. So we're looking to change our recommendation to permitting the stabilization funds. I'm sorry, the trust fund. I'm sorry. I don't have a notebook in front of me. I'm doing this all electronically, so I apologize. This is for the trust funds, Mike?
Correct.
Trust funds to be invested more liberally than outside the S&P 100, but within the scope of the 203C, Chapter 203C provisions of the general laws, which are less restrictive but still conservative.
Right, and a perfect example of that I mentioned quickly this evening where the town treasurer enlightened us that the general stabilization funding is in a savings account. So, it's not that money that we're talking about.
Yeah. So, do we have any other concerns that would limit our willingness to permit the select board to let the town treasurer use a slightly more liberal application of investment alternatives? Frankly, in this environment, this is not a bad time to be buying equities.
No, if I may, just in case it's the worries of anybody or members who are unable to attend and review the minutes. This doesn't open up investments willy-nilly. There's still rather strict state guidelines, and it's the actions and investments are still under audit and review and things. So it does give us a little bit more leeway, especially now in an environment that could eventually prove profitable. So it's not reckless by any means.
No, I agree with that. Any other questions or discussion? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 37 to the town meeting for adoption.
Also move that that we recommend town meeting adopt Article 37.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Terrific. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any opposed? Great. Thank you very much. I think that's it. Mike, thank you. I think we covered everything that we needed to.
Okay. Did you do the circuit breaker article? I may have missed that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the last one. That's right.
Yeah.
And so okay. I'm glad we've got you here because I looked at that. I thought we voted to approve that. So there was a change in language. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So
This is Article 45, by the way.
45.
Yeah.
On
February
page
27th.
91. Yeah, go ahead.
On February 27th, the Board of Assessors took a vote at the advice of my board and probably your board as well to get a little more specific.
Right.
It was very kind of open-ended. And they voted and approved unanimously to recommend the reduction of the per annum interest from 8% to 4%.
Right.
And increase the maximum qualifying gross receipts to 75,000 single and 90,000 married, so as to make it even more attractive.
Okay, that language is not in the recommendation. It
Okay.
says clause from 56,164 to 100% of the amount established annually by the Commission of Revenue as an income for seniors, and there is no inclusion of 75,000 in the in the recommendation.
Okay, I just forwarded you an email from the Board of Assessors on the vote
Yep.
that was taken.
Yep.
That specifies everything that could be embedded into the recommendation.
Okay, it's likely that didn't get incorporated into this draft.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's the case, oh, I just got this. Yeah, if that's the case, then I think that we wanted that. I believe we wanted that specificity,
Correct.
if I'm remembering properly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that was in the meeting at the Council on Aging as well. It
Yeah.
might have been Member Bradley that brought it up, or
Yeah.
Member Hart.
Yep. Okay, so I guess what we need to do is make sure that particular change is embedded in the recommendation. So we have to have Kevin Freitag fix that one for us.
Yeah, and just for the viewing audience in this board, currently there's 5 seniors that take advantage of this program.
Oh, it's
And
small.
the Board of Assessors, with your advice and the Select Board's advice, entertained this town meeting article to lower the interest rate and increase income guidelines, hoping that more people would qualify and be able to defer their property taxes.
Okay, all right. Well, if that's the case, then I think with that proviso, Lynn, that we make sure we get the appropriate language from town council.
Yes, I'll follow up on this.
Terrific. So could I have a motion to accept, to reopen the discussion on Article 45?
I'll make a motion to open consideration and the vote for Article 45.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So the discussion here, if there is any more, would be to incorporate the changes that we actually recommended that have not been reflected here completely into, I mean, they've reflected the change from 8% to 4% in the interest rate available, but not the $100,000, 75,000 single and 100,000 for the couple, Mike?
It was 95.
95.
90 or 95. I just closed the email. Hang on, let me open it.
Yeah, it's okay. But to have those incorporated, I think if we do that, then we'll be fine. So do we have any discussion on that? So right now we're voting on reconsideration of the article to open it up. So if there's no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
great. So now we need a motion to approve Article 45 again, based on that revised information and the language that will be more specific that we actually recommended and requested. Make sure that it's incorporated in that article.
I'll move to recommend acceptance by town meeting of Article 45, including the new dollar and percentage specifics as requested.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Terrific. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Okay, I think that's good. The last thing we have to talk. Now, I will bring this up. Alex Whiteside sent around a very long memo. And I asked Lynn to send it all around to just so we're aware of this. I understand his issues. I understand, all of the things that are brought up. I'm not quite sure what to do with that. I'm open. Does anybody have any thoughts on how we should approach this? Short of leaving it to him at town meeting to come up with recommendations of his own. He basically wants us to table this and remand it for further work and further specificities to be included. I understand why the planning board doesn't want to do that. I can see both sides. I'm interested to know if anybody here has any thoughts on this. Doug.
If I may, at this point, after long years of trying to put something like this together, I don't think we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
I like that.
And
Thank you.
should leave our recommendation as is. Mr. Whiteside will have the right and opportunity to make amendments at town meeting, which I'm sure he'll try to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's better at this point that we get something which we can then later amend rather than start from scratch and keep cobbling away until we get something perfect.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I agree with you, Doug.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Anybody else?
I'll just say that
Completely
I
agree.
think that there was the way that the planning board chair represented the kind of lack of detail in the article that we voted on made a lot of sense to me.
I'm sorry, Christine, just per Lynn, for the record, we're talking about the Milton overlay article.
Milton Village overlay.
Yes, just for the record. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have introduced that. Thank you, Doug.
So that's my only comment, that I think that having it a bit flexible by design makes a lot of sense at this point in the process.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think if you're too specific, then you're opening up all kinds of other issues later on. Okay.
I agree.
Okay. I think we're okay. Now, the last thing I want to do is make sure there are a few comments that are still outstanding. Lynn, I think we're in pretty good shape. I think there may be 2 or 3 that still have to be supplied.
Yes, I mean, we might have to revisit any of the articles discussed tonight, as well as.
Yeah, those of you who are responsible for them, please attend to them. And Lynn, do you want to contact whomever wrote them? I think you have the catalog of who was doing what. There was one. Yeah, I think I have one that we just voted on. I'm trying to remember. I didn't send you anything on that, but that was the one that I was supposed to. But we can talk about that later. You can
Just
send.
a thought, though, that somebody who was not part of this meeting might not have the context to then write the article comments. So perhaps somebody who's been at the meeting this evening could take over writing the comments.
The only comment that the article that changed was the Great Estate. And now, who wrote that one? The one that we voted on with, was that 33? I have to go back and look at this, sorry.
33.
I bet Aaron wrote it.
Who did, Aaron Bradley?
I mean, I might be
You might be right on that one.
But I feel like she raised her hand because she was.
I'm sorry, what article was it again?
33?
33.
Yeah.
33 is the Affordable Housing Trust appropriation.
Oh, no, it wasn't then. It was, let me go back. It was article
43.
43, I'm sorry, right, 43.
And
Yes,
it was Aaron.
yes, it was Aaron.
Okay, so that has to be, so we'll have to redraft it since we changed the recommendation. It's not fair to ask her to that. Does someone want to volunteer to do that one?
I will do it.
Bless your heart. Okay, so are there any others all the others, I don't think we changed recommendations on in the others. Other than the, we changed our recommendation on the trust assets, Article 37. Who was assigned to that one?
I think it was
Chris
Chris.
Hart. Yeah.
Chris, do we have that one in hand? Did he send that draft yet?
No, he has not.
Oh, he has not. Okay, we need that one. If he hasn't done it, he wasn't here. He didn't hear the
copy
discussion.
I have of the draft has it that we recommend it. So we might just
Okay.
draft that's
Well,
there.
if that's the case that we recommended, the draft says we recommended. Do you want to, Lynn? Do you want to rattle his cage and say we need this by Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What other ones do we still have to have?
I'd have to go through the draft.
Okay. I guess I'll leave it at this. Lynn, please send us all of the remaining comments that have to be written. Please notify the individuals directly and please request that they get their comments in by Friday so we can accumulate them and send them out. I'll have my letter to you by Friday and pull it together so we have time before it goes to the printer next week to put it together so nobody's under any more pressure than needed.
Sounds good.
Okay. Everybody, I'm hoping is bearing up under these utterly extraordinary circumstances. And I hope you're all well and your families are well. You stay that way. Remember, wash your hands, don't touch your face, all that other nice stuff the doctors are always telling us. And social distancing, well, this is an example of social distancing in the extreme. And honestly, it has not worked badly. My sense is it has worked reasonably well. And so I compliment all of you. And thank you very much for the time that you put in and you are putting in. I will share a conversation that I had with Bob Hiss last week about the town meeting. You know, there are a couple of alternatives that are being discussed about the location of the town meeting if we're still under restrictions. One of them was actually to have it out of doors on a Sunday afternoon and space ourselves with chairs that would keep us from, you know, being too close to one another. Another one was having a virtual meeting with a consent agenda. I don't know how that would work, particularly given some of the issues that we have to talk about. And a third proposal was to just have a slimmed down town meeting with just budget articles and some of these other warrants that are non-budgetary postponed to a later date when the times are not quite as harrowing. There has been no decision, to my knowledge, about which of these approaches is going to be in place. I think we're in a very fluid environment, but my sense is that as long as we can complete this work, at least we will have the warrant articles in place, whether they use now or whether they use at a later time, and our work will have been completed. So to that end, if there's any other information that I have, I will communicate it out to you. But if there is no other new business, the chair will thank you extremely humbly for your time and your great work and your attention, and request a motion to adjourn till our next meeting, which will schedule when we need it. I mean, the next meeting, technically the next meeting would be the day of the town meeting, June 15th. But if there's anything else that comes up, we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Mr. Denny.
Yes, Mike, thank you for being with us.
No worries. Sorry about the interruption. I hope I didn't hold things up. And
No,
thank you for-
it was perfectly fine. Everything worked out very well.
No.
But if there's no other business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. God bless. Good luck, everybody. Happy
Thank you.
Easter. Happy Passover.